Okay, I want you to do a little mental exercise with me for a second. Just stick with me, because this really frames everything we're going to get into in this deep dive.
All right, I'm ready.
I want you to imagine you're holding a standard six-sided die. You know, just a regular one, white with black dots, right out of a board game box.
Yep, got it. I can feel the sharp corners.
Okay, so you're holding it. Now hold it up and look at it. My question is this. How many sides of that die can your eyes physically see at the exact same time?
At once. Well, if I angle it just right, I guess I can see the top, the front face, and maybe one of the sides. So 3.
3. Exactly. 3 is the maximum. It is physically, biologically impossible to see all 6 sides at the same time. The laws of optics just don't allow it.
Right. Your head would have to be in multiple places at once.
Which, you know, some days feels necessary. But the point is, if you want to explain that die to someone, if you want to show it to them, you have to make a choice.
You have to pick a side. You have to turn your wrist and present one face to them.
And that act of choosing a face, it's not deception. It's not a lie. It's a necessary act of compression. You're taking this whole object and simplifying it so you can communicate it.
You have to. You can't show the whole thing at once.
But here's the real question, and this is the core of what we're talking about today. As we consume information, I mean, reading the news, watching a documentary, even just hearing a story from a friend, do we realize we're only ever seeing one face of the die?
Or have we somehow convinced ourselves that the one face we're being shown is the entire die?
Yeah.
That what we see is all there is?
That's it. That is the fundamental delusion of our time, I think. We live in this age that is just completely obsessed with objective truth.
Oh, totally. We love fact-checking, debunking the gotcha moments. We crave the certainty of knowing if something is true or false. It's binary.
It feels good, right? You can see a headline, check it, and go, misinformation. And then you feel like you've solved something. You've cleaned up a little corner of the internet.
It does feel good. And look, we should be clear. That lens, that binary true-false lens, is absolutely essential for some things.
Like what?
Well, like building a bridge. I definitely want the engineers to be obsessed with objective, verifiable truth. I don't want any interpretive approaches to load-bearing calculations.
Right. I'm feeling like this steel beam has a very strong, hopeful energy today. Not what you want to hear.
Precisely. The problem is we started taking that same tool, that same is it factually correct lens, and we're applying it to things that aren't meant to be solved like a math problem.
Things like art or someone's personal experience.
Exactly. Art, personal narratives, history, complex systems like the economy, we treat them like they have a single right answer, and if we could just find it, all the arguments would stop.
And that's where everything falls apart.
Yeah.
That's where we just end up screaming at each other online.
It is. So today, our mission is to unpack a completely different way of seeing the world. The source material we're drawing from calls it interpretive consumption.
Now, I know that sounds a little academic, maybe a bit like a college course you'd skip, but I promise you, what we're talking about here is a genuine survival skill for the modern world.
It truly is. It's about making a fundamental shift. The shift from asking, is this objectively correct, to asking, what truth is being explored here?
And maybe even more importantly, who is telling this story and why?
Yes. So over the next hour or so, we're going to equip you with a new mental framework. We're not just analyzing media, we're analyzing how our own brains process meaning versus facts.
We're also going to get into why the internet, by its very design, just destroys nuance, and how you can reclaim a sense of deep curiosity in an age that seems built for distraction.
This is all about the difference between downloading information and actually learning. If you're just accepting the face of the die you're shown, you're not learning. You're just downloading a file.
I love that. Downloading versus learning. Okay, let's start by digging into the core definition here. The sources draw a really sharp line between what they call the objective truths lens and the interpretive truths lens. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So the objective lens is what most of us are familiar with. It's the world of verification. It asks, is this factually accurate?
The science lab approach.
Exactly. If I make a claim like water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, that's a claim you can test. You can go out, get the equipment, run the experiment, and verify it. It's either true or it isn't.
It's repeatable, it's universal.
Right. But the interpretive lens asks a totally different set of questions. It's not about verification, it's about understanding. It asks, what perspective shaped this communication? And what is being expressed beyond the literal facts?
Now, this is a really crucial point that sources make. This doesn't mean you reject the idea of truth altogether.
Not at all. This is not a slide into, well, that's just your truth relativism where nothing matters. It's a recognition that most human communication, almost all of it, is partial truth, framed through a specific point of view.
It's someone showing you a specific face of the die.
Always. Think about the boom in true crime documentaries over the past few years. You watch one of those and you get swept up in it.
Oh, completely. You feel like you're on the jury. You come away absolutely convinced this person is guilty or this person was framed.
You feel that way because your objective lens is fully engaged. You think you're just being presented with raw data, with evidence.
But I'm not, am I?
An interpretive lens would force you to step back and ask, wait a minute. The director chose that ominous, low-frequency music to play whenever the suspect was on screen.
Right. And they chose to show that one tearful interview with the victim's mother 3 different times.
They chose which interview clips to include and, maybe more importantly, which ones to leave on the cutting room floor. They chose the lighting, the order of events. Every single choice is a fingerprint from the creator.
So when we're talking about applying this lens to creative works, we're essentially looking for the creator's fingerprints. What are the specific things we should be watching for?
The key questions are, why this story? Why is it being told by this particular person or organization? And why are they telling it in this specific way?
Those choices tell their own story.
They reveal everything. They reveal the creator's biography, their values, their fears, their hopes for the world. You look at the tone. Is the documentary cynical and despairing, or is it hopeful and calling for reform?
You look at the framing. Who is positioned as the hero of the story? Who's the victim? Who's the villain?
And a huge one is metaphors. The metaphors a creator uses often reveal more about their underlying worldview than the literal content of their work.
Give me an example of that. How does a metaphor reveal so much?
Okay, think about how different news outlets talk about the economy. One report might use war metaphors. They'll talk about fighting inflation, battling a recession, or consumers being frontline soldiers in an economic war.
Okay, so that frames it as a conflict. Us versus them. A zero-sum game.
Exactly. It creates a sense of crisis and antagonism. But another report, using the exact same data, the same inflation numbers, the same GDP figures, might use a gardening metaphor.
A gardening metaphor, like what?
They'll talk about cultivating growth, pruning bad investments, and waiting for policies to bear fruit. It frames the economy not as a war, but as a complex organic system that requires patience and care.
The facts are identical, but the truth being communicated is completely different. One is a story of conflict, the other is a story of cultivation.
And neither is objectively wrong. They're just different faces of the die. The interpretive consumer sees both and asks, why was this frame chosen?
It reminds me of just talking to a friend who's complaining about their boss. You're not sitting there fact-checking their story against the company handbook.
You'd be a terrible friend if you did.
Right. You're listening to understand their frustration. You're listening for the emotional truth of their experience, not the forensic details.
That's a perfect everyday example. If you jump in with, well, actually, technically, your lunch break is only 30 minutes, so your boss was right to say something, you have fundamentally failed the interaction.
You're using the objective lens when the situation calls for the interpretive one.
You're using a hammer to wash a window. It's the wrong tool for the job. You're searching for objective accuracy when you should be searching for subjective meaning.
Let's bring this back to that dice metaphor, because the sources get really deep on how this applies to educational material. And this, for me, was a bit of a mind bender.
Because we're taught to see education as the one place where things are purely objective.
Exactly. A textbook is supposed to be, the final word. It's the facts, laid out cleanly.
But it almost never is, and it often can't be. Think about the dice again. Any complex topic, history, economics, even something like biology, isn't a 6-sided die. It's a 20-sided die, or a 100-sided die.
It's got infinite dimensions, really.
Right. And an educator, whether it's a professor, a textbook author, or a YouTuber making an explainer video, they can't show you all 100 sides at once. They'd lose you in the first 30 seconds.
Your brain would just shut down from the complexity.
So they have to compress the dice. They have to choose 1 or 2 faces to show you to make the topic understandable and memorable.
Can you give me a really concrete example of that compression in education?
Sure. Let's take a high school history class on the Industrial Revolution. The teacher might decide to focus on the technological innovations. That's one face of the die. James Watt's steam engine, the spinning jenny, the rise of factories.
Right, the great inventor's narrative.
It's a true story. Those things happened. But to tell that story clearly, The teacher might have to simplify or even omit other faces of the die.
Like the social upheaval, the story of the Luddites who smashed the machines because they lost their livelihoods.
Or the environmental devastation. Or the impact on family structures. Or the colonial resource extraction that fueled the whole thing. Each of those is another true face of the die.
So the teacher isn't lying by focusing on the technology, but they are making an editorial choice. They're excluding other truths to illuminate one specific truth.
Precisely. Or think about how we teach basic science. We teach every middle schooler Newtonian physics, FMA. Gravity is a force that pulls an apple down from a tree.
A simple, elegant model.
And based on what Einstein taught us, it's also wrong. Gravity isn't a force, it's the curvature of space-time caused by mass and energy.
So why don't we just teach that from the start?
Because if you tried to explain general relativity to a 12-year-old, their eyes would glaze over. You would have taught them nothing. You have to use a simplified wrong model to build a foundation for a more complex right model later on.
It's like a useful lie.
It's a pedagogical necessity. The simplified model is a tool for understanding. The goal of interpretive consumption, then, isn't to shout, "My physics teacher lied to me."
It's to ask, okay, which face of the die am I looking at right now? And what other faces might exist that I haven't been shown yet?
Yes. It turns learning from a passive reception of facts into an active investigation of perspectives.
Which feels so much more empowering. You're not a victim of a curriculum. You're a co-creator of your own understanding.
And this is where we see that demanding pure, 100% objective truth at all times can actually be counterproductive. It can get in the way of learning and understanding.
The sources list a few key areas where this happens. Art is the first one.
Right. A poem is not a lab report. Reading a beautiful poem about a sunset and then pulling out a light meter to check if the color spectrum described is scientifically accurate is, well, it's insane.
You're missing the entire point. You're missing the emotional truth in a search for literal truth.
Then there's early learning, which we just touched on. If you demand perfect, nuanced accuracy from a beginner, you just overwhelm them. You kill their curiosity before it even has a chance to sprout.
You have to let people be wrong on the way to being right.
And then there's personal narratives. This one, for me, is just so critical in our current climate.
I agree. This feels like the source of so many painful online interactions.
It is. When someone shares a deeply personal lived experience, a story of trauma, of discrimination, of a personal struggle, and the immediate response from a listener is a forensic correction.
Well, actually, the data shows that your experience is an outlier.
Oof, it's brutal. And it feels like a profound invalidation. Because the value, the truth of a personal narrative is not in its statistical typicality. It's in the subjective reality of how that person experienced the event.
You're trying to fact-check a feeling.
You are, and you can't. The truth is the experience itself.
Finally, the sources point to complex systems. Economics, politics, culture.
This is the big one. These systems are just too messy, too chaotic, too multivariable for single objective answers. But we crave that certainty. We want the one simple explanation for why inflation is high.
And so we latch onto one theory, one face of the die, and declare it's the whole truth.
And that leads to this incredible ideological rigidity. We become so confident in our one-sided view that we can't even see the other faces. We stop learning.
Okay, so if this interpretive lens is so powerful and useful, why is it so damn hard for us to use? Why is our default setting always, is this right or is this wrong?
That brings us to part 2 of this, which is the psychology of ambiguity. And the research here is just fascinating. It turns out that at a fundamental level, human beings are meaning-making creatures long before we are truth-verifying creatures.
What does that mean exactly? Meaning-making before truth-verifying.
It means we evolved to find patterns, to tell stories, to infer connections. That's our brain's default mode. We're built to narrate our world.
So you'd think we'd be good at interpretive thinking. It sounds like the same thing.
We're good at creating a single interpretation. We are very, very bad at holding multiple interpretations at once. We have a deep psychological discomfort with ambiguity.
And this comes from our evolutionary past.
It comes directly from it. The sources use the classic predator in the bushes scenario.
Okay, set the scene for me.
You're one of our ancestors. You're walking through the tall grass on the African savanna. Suddenly, you hear a rustle in the bushes to your left.
Just a rustle. Could be anything.
Exactly. Now, you have 2 potential cognitive pathways. Pathway A is the interpretive path. You pause and you think, an interesting auditory data point. Now, there are multiple interpretive possibilities here. It could be the wind, it could be a small animal, or it could be a lion.
I should probably hold these competing hypotheses in a state of intellectual tension while I gather more data.
Right. And while you're doing that, the lion eats you. Your interpretive genes do not get passed on to the next generation.
Okay, so that's not the winning strategy. What's pathway B?
Pathway B is what psychologists call a jump to cognitive closure. The moment you hear the rustle, your brain instantly closes the loop. It screams, lion, and you run in the other direction.
Even if it was just the wind.
Especially if it was just the wind. Think about the cost-benefit analysis. The cost of a false positive running away from the wind is a few wasted calories.
But the cost of a false negative staying put when it's a lion is death.
It's everything. So natural selection built us a brain with a powerful bias. It is better to be wrong and alive than to be uncertain and dead. We are the descendants of the anxious and the decisive.
We are literally hardwired to hate the phrase, "I'm not sure yet."
We crave cognitive closure. We want firm answers. That's why conspiracy theories are so seductive. They provide a simple, complete, and certain story in a complex, incomplete, and uncertain world.
And then in the modern world, you layer our personal identity on top of that ancient wiring.
And that's where it gets really explosive. Certainty feels like stability. If I have a clear, unchanging set of beliefs about politics or religion or my favorite sports team, then I know who I am. Those beliefs are my identity anchors.
Keep me steady in a chaotic world.
They do. So when interpretive consumption comes along and asks a question like, hey, what if that story you believe about your political party is incomplete? It doesn't feel like an interesting intellectual puzzle.
It feels like someone is trying to pull up my anchor in the middle of a storm.
Yeah.
It feels like an attack.
It feels like an existential threat. The brain doesn't distinguish between a threat to your physical body and a threat to your core identity. The fear response is the same. The question that pops up is, if this narrative changes, who am I?
Wow, that explains so much of the anger and vitriol we see online. It's not really about the facts being debated. It's about people defending their sense of self.
It's identity defense masquerading as intellectual debate. And on top of all that, there's a simple energy cost.
What do you mean energy? Like calories?
Yeah, it's literally cognitive energy. Your brain, which is only about 2% of your body weight, uses about 20% of your daily calories. It's an incredibly expensive organ to run.
Okay.
And interpretive thinking, holding multiple competing ideas in your head at once, tolerating that unresolved tension, is one of the most energy-intensive things a brain can do.
So it's cheaper metabolically to just pick a side.
So much cheaper. It is far more energy efficient to decide this person is a hero or this person is a villain than to hold the nuanced view that this person is a complex human being with both admirable and flawed qualities. Nuance burns glucose.
And our brains are, at their core, lazy. They're cognitive misers. They want the cheapest solution.
Especially in our modern environment. The endless stream of notifications and short-form content is training our brains for fast, simple answers. Deep, slow, interpretive focus is mentally exhausting.
And that's before we even get to the social and educational factors.
Right. School, for the most part, rewards the right answer. You get the A+ for filling in the bubble correctly, not for writing an essay about why the question is ambiguous.
And socially, confidence is rewarded. Bold, certain statements get you noticed. They make you seem like a leader.
Whereas saying, well, I'm still thinking about this from a few different angles and I haven't come to a conclusion yet, is often perceived as weakness or indecisiveness.
So let me get this straight. We have our evolutionary biology, our sense of identity, our brain's energy budget, our educational system, and our social incentives all pushing us in one direction.
Towards certainty, towards closing the loop, towards picking a face of the die and calling it the whole thing.
That is a powerful current to swim against.
It's an incredibly powerful current. But the good news, according to the sources, is that it's not impossible. Tolerance for ambiguity isn't a fixed trait you're born with. It's a skill. And it's a skill that develops in predictable stages.
Okay, I love a good developmental model. It gives you a roadmap. So they lay out the 6 stages of interpretive thinking.
They do. It's a progression from needing simple, absolute answers to being able to navigate complex, ambiguous landscapes with a kind of wisdom.
Let's walk through them. Where do we all start? Stage 1.
Stage 1 is called the search for the right answer. This is the default state for a child, and frankly, for many adults. It's the belief that for every question, there is one single correct interpretation.
Just tell me what's on the test, teacher.
That's the mantra of stage 1. Ambiguity feels like a mistake. If 2 experts disagree, one of them must be wrong or lying. Authority figures, teachers, doctors, experts are seen as keepers of the one right answer, and their job is to give it to you.
This works fine for, learning your multiplication tables. 2 plus 2 is always 4.
It's essential for foundational knowledge,
Mm.
but it starts to break down the minute you get into more complex fields like history or literature or philosophy.
Which leads you, inevitably, to stage 2, the discovery of complexity.
This is the big uh-oh moment. It often happens in late adolescence or early adulthood. You encounter two smart, credible experts who completely disagree, or you follow the rules you were taught, but they don't lead to the promised outcome.
Wait, my economics textbook said this would happen, but the real world is doing something totally different.
Exactly. The common reaction at this stage is a kind of radical skepticism. You swing from absolute belief in authority to absolute disbelief. No one really knows anything. It's all just opinions. Science is always changing its mind, so you can't trust any of it.
I see this all the time online. It's the pipeline from naive trust to cynical distrust.
It's a very dangerous stage. If you get stuck here, you can drift into cynicism, nihilism, or conspiracy thinking. But if you manage to push through the discomfort, you arrive at stage 3.
And what's that?
Stage 3 is multiplicity. This is the stage where you accept that there are many different perspectives on an issue.
The classic line here is, all opinions are valid.
That's it. Or, you have your truth and I have my truth. On the surface, it seems very open-minded and compassionate.
But there's a trap there, isn't there?
There's a huge trap. It's a compassionate stance, but it lacks discernment. It tolerates different views, which is a step forward, but it struggles to evaluate them. It treats a well-researched scientific paper with the same intellectual weight as a random post on a conspiracy forum because, hey, they're all just perspectives.
You lose any sense of quality control. The landscape becomes completely flat.
Correct. Which is why stage 4 is such a critical leap. Stage 4 is evaluation and context. This is where real sophistication begins to emerge.
So you're not just acknowledging multiple perspectives, you're starting to sort them.
You're starting to ask better questions. Questions like, okay, what evidence supports this particular perspective? Or in what context does this interpretation work best?
Ah, context. So you start to realize that a truth can be useful in one situation, but not another.
Yes. You grasp that truth can be contextual without being completely arbitrary. The Newtonian model of gravity is true enough in the context of playing baseball. It's not true in the context of calculating GPS satellite orbits, where you need relativity. One tool for one job, another tool for another.
You're no longer just drowning in a sea of opinions. You're building a mental toolkit.
Precisely. And that leads to stage 5, integration.
This sounds advanced.
This is a very high level of cognitive functioning. At this stage, you become comfortable holding tension and even contradiction. You see that contradictions aren't a sign of failure, they're often informative.
So you don't feel the need to resolve every conflict into a single neat answer.
Exactly. You can understand that a new policy might be good for the economy but bad for the environment, and you don't have to pretend one of those isn't true. You can hold both realities at once. You can see that something might be emotionally true for someone, even if it's factually inaccurate.
You can look at a historical figure and see them as both a hero and a villain simultaneously.
Yes. You don't need to flatten them into a simple caricature. You can appreciate the whole messy, contradictory human being. It's about seeing reality as layered.
Okay, and that brings us to the final summit, stage 6, reflective wisdom.
This is the Jedi Master level. It's rare, but you know it when you see it. It's a fluid, effortless movement between all the different lenses.
You instinctively know when you need the precision of the objective lens and when you need the empathy of the interpretive lens.
Right. You don't try to solve a relationship problem with a spreadsheet, and you don't try to build an airplane based on your feelings. There's a beautiful quote from the source material here. It says, "Ambiguity is not the absence of truth. It is the shape of complex truth."
Wow, the shape of complex truth. That's good. But here's the problem. We're all trying to climb this ladder to reach these higher stages, but we're living inside a machine that feels like it's designed to kick us right back down to stage 1.
And that is the digital trap. It's a core argument in the sources. Our digital environments are not neutral platforms. They are active architects of our thinking, and they are structurally biased towards certainty.
What's the number one factor there? Is it just the speed of it all?
Speed is a massive part of it. Interpretation, nuance, holding multiple perspectives, that all takes time. It's slow thinking, certainty, this is good, this is evil, you're right, you're wrong. It's instantaneous. It fits perfectly into the rhythm of an endlessly scrolling feed.
And the algorithms that run these platforms, they don't reward slow, nuanced thinking.
They actively punish it. The algorithms are designed for one thing: engagement. And what drives engagement? High emotion, strong agreement, and even more so, strong disagreement.
A post that says, this is a complicated issue with some valid points on both sides, gets zero traction.
It's a dosed. But a post that says, here's the one shocking reason why everything you believe is a lie, that goes viral. Certainty and outrage have become the primary social currency of the internet.
You mentioned the idea of context earlier, and how vital it is for interpretation. The internet seems to be a context-destroying machine.
It's a phenomenon called context collapse. It's one of the most important concepts for understanding our modern world. In real life, communication has a context. The things I say to my best friend have a different meaning than the things I say in a job interview.
The time, the place, the audience, the relationship, it all shapes the meaning.
Exactly. The internet flattens all of that. You see a 10-second clip from a 3-hour podcast. You see a single tweet without any of the conversational history. You see a headline without the article. You're getting the information, but it's stripped of all its original context.
And since our brains hate a vacuum, we just fill in the missing context with our own assumptions and biases.
We have to. If I already dislike the person in the clip, I assume the worst possible context, that they were being malicious or stupid. If I like them, I assume the best possible context, that they were being sarcastic or were taken out of context. We hallucinate the frame that confirms what we already believe.
And this all feeds into what the sources call public identity signaling.
Right. On the internet, what you believe isn't just a private conviction, it's a public performance. It's the jersey you wear to show which team you're on.
So expressing ambiguity or nuance can look like disloyalty to your team.
It can be seen as a betrayal. If everyone in your online tribe has decided that a certain movie is terrible and problematic, and you pop up and say, well, I thought the script had some interesting ideas, you risk being cast out. It's safer to just echo the simple, certain consensus.
The sources talk about a great divergence happening because of all this, that the information age is actually not creating one outcome, but two, splitting us.
It is. The exact same digital environment is producing two polar opposite results. For people who are already anxious or whose identity is built on being right, the fire hose of information makes them more rigid and more certain. They use the internet to find evidence that confirms their existing beliefs and to build higher walls around their identity. That's the rigid path.
On the other path.
That's the interpretive path. For people who are naturally curious or whose identity is more flexible, the same fire hose of information makes them more nuanced and more humble. They see all the conflicting perspectives and think, wow, this is way more complicated than I thought. The world is bigger than my little corner of it.
So what's the variable that decides which path you go down?
The sources argue that the key separator is identity flexibility. The core question is your identity built on being right? Or is your identity built on being a learner?
That's a huge distinction.
It's everything. If your identity is, I am a person who is right about X, then any information that contradicts X is a threat to your very self. But if your identity is, I am a person who is learning about X, then contradictory information isn't a threat. It's data. It's interesting. It's a gift.
When you identify as a learner, being wrong doesn't mean you failed. It means you've succeeded at finding the edge of your knowledge.
Exactly. You don't lose status when you change your mind. You gain understanding.
Okay, so we need to find a way to live in this world. We can't be in interpretation mode all the time, or we would be paralyzed by indecision. We never choose what to have for lunch.
Total analysis paralysis.
But we can't be in certainty mode all the time either, or we become rigid, dogmatic, and frankly impossible to be around. So how do we strike a healthy balance?
This is where the source material gets really practical. It offers a powerful heuristic, a sort of mental rule of thumb, to help you decide which lens to use when.
And what's the heuristic?
It's about asking yourself one simple question before you engage with a problem. Is this reality primarily mechanical, or is it primarily human?
Mechanical versus human. Okay, unpack those.
The mechanical reality is a system that operates on consistent, predictable, objective rules. Think of engineering, mathematics, computer programming, accounting. In these domains, you should default to a certainty-first approach.
The objective lens.
Yes. You want your accountant to follow the tax code with rigid precision. You want your surgeon to follow the exact medical procedure. You measure twice, you cut once, there is a right answer, and your job is to find it.
A bridge can't be interpretive. It either stands up or it falls down.
That's the perfect summary. Now, a human meaning reality is different. This is the world of relationships, art, culture, emotions, personal identity. These are systems that are complex, subjective, and context-dependent.
And in these domains.
In these domains, you should default to an interpretation-first approach. If you start with rigid certainty here, I know exactly why you said that. This piece of art is objectively bad. You crush all the nuance. You distort the reality you're trying to understand.
Assuming you know your partner's intention with 100% certainty is the fastest way to start a fight.
It's a guaranteed recipe for conflict. You are applying a mechanical, find the right answer lens to the beautiful, messy mystery of another human being. It's the wrong tool for the job.
This explains so many arguments I've witnessed and been in. One person is operating from a mechanical lens.
But on Tuesday at 8:15 p.m., you said these exact words.
And the other person is operating from a meaning lens. But that's not what I meant. That's not what I felt.
And they just talk past each other because they're playing two different games with two different rule books. So the practical advice from the sources can be distilled down to a simple motto. Be decisive in action, but provisional in belief.
Okay, what does that look like in daily life?
When it's time to act, be decisive. Choose the restaurant, hire the candidate, buy the car. Don't get stuck in paralysis. Use certainty as a tool to move forward in the world.
But internally.
Internally, hold your beliefs provisionally, with humility. Accept that the restaurant you chose might not be great. Be open to the possibility that the candidate you hired might not work out. Be willing to update your beliefs when new information comes in.
So the ultimate principle is measure before meaning where reality is mechanical. Seek meaning before measurement where reality is human.
That is the core of the framework.
So if we want to get better at this, if we want to strengthen our interpretation muscle, how do we do it? The sources are clear that curiosity isn't just some personality trait you're born with. It's a practice.
It is a practice, and it's often misunderstood. We think curiosity is just being interested in things. But if you break it down, it's actually a three-step process.
What are the steps?
Step 1 is you notice a gap between what you know and what you want to know. Step 2 is you have to tolerate the discomfort of that gap, the feeling of not knowing. And step 3 is you take an action to explore the gap.
It's that second step that's the killer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tolerating the discomfort of not knowing.
That's where most people bail. They feel the discomfort of the gap, and they immediately rush to Google the answer to make the discomfort go away. Or worse, they just make up an answer that feels good.
So real curiosity requires you to sit in that, I don't know, space for a little while and just let it be.
It does, and the sources make a fantastic distinction between two different kinds of curiosity. Depth-oriented curiosity versus novelty-oriented curiosity.
This one really hit home for me. I feel like I live in novelty-oriented curiosity.
A lot of us do. It's basically distraction masquerading as learning. It's about quick jumps, constant stimulation. It's clicking from one Wikipedia article to the next for 3 hours at 2 a.m. It's motion without direction.
You end up with your head full of disconnected trivia, but no real understanding.
Exactly. Depth-oriented curiosity is the opposite. It stays with a single question. It builds connections. It has direction. It's slow and deliberate. It leaves you feeling more grounded, not more scattered.
What's a good test to know which one you're engaging in?
Ask yourself afterwards, did this change in any meaningful way how I see the world? If the information leaves no residue, if it doesn't alter your mental models at all, it was probably just novelty seeking. It was intellectual junk food.
Okay, so let's get into the gym routine. What are the specific, practical exercises the sources recommend for building these interpretive muscles?
Number 1 is to ask better questions. This is the foundation. Instead of asking the default question, is this true? Train yourself to ask different, more interesting questions.
Like what?
Like, what problem is this idea trying to solve? Even a terrible idea is usually an attempt to solve some kind of problem. Understanding that problem gives you a more empathetic view.
That's a great one. It forces you to look at the motivation behind the belief.
Another one is, what would someone who intelligently disagrees with me say? And then don't just dismiss them. Actually try to build their argument for them. Make it as strong as you possibly can. That's called steel manning.
Okay, so ask better questions. What's practice number 2?
Number 2 is linger. This is the antidote to the internet's need for speed. Pick one question, a really good one, and just stay with it for a few days. Don't immediately rush to find the answer.
Just let it sit there.
Let it marinate. Think about it while you're walking the dog, or doing the dishes, or driving. Let your non-conscious mind chew on it. Depth doesn't come from speed. It comes from time.
I like that. Practice number 3.
Follow threads. This is about going vertical instead of horizontal. Instead of learning one shallow fact about 20 different topics, pick one topic and go deep.
So don't just read the article.
Read the article, then find the study the article is based on. Then look up the critiques of that study. Then see if the original author wrote a response to the critiques. You follow the conversation down through the layers.
Okay, that makes sense.
What's number 4? Creation. You don't truly know if you understand something until you try to explain it to someone else. So create something out of what you're learning.
It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, right?
Not at all. Write a summary in your own words. Record a voice note on your phone as if you were explaining it to a friend. The act of creation forces you to confront the gaps in your own understanding. You'll quickly find the parts where you say, oh, wait, I can't actually explain how that part works. And that's where the real learning begins.
Love that. Number 5.
Normalize being wrong. Treat your wrong answers not as personal failures, but as interesting data points. Get curious about your mistakes. Oh, that's not what I thought. Interesting. I wonder why I believed that. What was the flaw in my model?
It takes the ego out of it. Being wrong becomes an opportunity, not a judgment.
Precisely. And the last one, number 6, is my personal favorite. It's called the surprise audit.
A surprise audit? What's that?
At the end of every day, just take 30 seconds and ask yourself a simple question. What surprised me today?
Why that question specifically?
Because the feeling of surprise is a physiological reaction to a prediction error. It's your brain screaming, hey, the world didn't work the way you thought it would. Surprise is the raw, unprocessed ore of curiosity. If you learn to notice and collect your surprises, you will never run out of things to be curious about.
And if nothing surprised you all day, it probably means you weren't paying very close attention.
Or you were just sleepwalking through your day, forcing everything you saw to fit into your existing comfortable models. Finding your surprise is finding your growth edge.
Wow. We really covered a lot of ground today. We started with that dice model, the simple but profound idea that we can never see the whole picture at once.
We walked through the 6 stages of interpretive thinking, from that simple search for the one right answer, all the way up to a state of reflective wisdom.
We dove into the digital trap and how the architecture of our online world actively pushes us back down that ladder towards a false sense of certainty.
And we landed on a practical framework for balancing that mechanical reality with human meaning and some real concrete habits for cultivating a deeper curiosity.
And I think it's important to underscore the why of all this. The sources are clear. This isn't just about being a smarter media consumer or winning arguments. It's about something much more fundamental.
It's about mental stability. It's about resilience. A mind that is built on rigid certainty is brittle. When it encounters a world that is messy and gray, it shatters.
But an interpretive mind is flexible.
It bends, it adapts, it can handle being wrong, it can handle change and complexity without breaking. That flexibility is mental health in the 21st century.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought from the source material that really stuck with me. It's this idea that curiosity isn't a delicate flower you have to nurture in a greenhouse. It's more as a weed. It's robust. It will grow anywhere as long as you don't actively poison the soil.
And the poison is premature certainty.
Yes. The source puts it this way. Curiosity grows wherever questions are allowed to live longer than answers.
That's the whole thing right there.
So the final question for you to take with you is this. In your own life, in your work, in your relationships, inside your own head, are you killing your questions too early just to feel the temporary comfort of an answer?